I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering and data analytics. In this episode, we're going to return to our data engineering playlist, and we're going to look at CTEs, or common table expressions as they're known, where you can sort of create a table in memory on the fly in your queries that you can use as a join in the same queries, and so you can save yourself the trouble of creating a temporary table or those kinds of things, and it makes it very, very handy and extremely flexible for your SQL. So without further ado, let's get to our CTEs in SQL Server and Oracle. Okay, so to get started, I've opened Oracle SQL Developer, and I'm using an old Oracle 11G database on the back end. It's the same for the newer flavors of Oracle. And I've got an event data table, so I did a select star on that. You can see it's got an event type with several earthquakes. It's got some tsunamis and some floods and volcanoes. And these have been stored in order according to data ID. Just as a simple example, and there's some descriptive data in another field called event description on the right hand side there. And so what we can do is make a problem like let's see the last event that happened for each type. And in order to do that, we're going to use a CTE, and so we're going to start our CTE expression using the with keyword there, and we'll say with Qmax, that's the name I'm giving it as, and then we'll put our opening and closing brackets around it, as you can see, and then we're going to type a select statement in between the two brackets. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the event type and then the maximum of the data ID as the max ID, and then I'll get that from event data, and I'll group by event type. So that's going to give me the last, the event type and the last number, or the maximum number for each of the IDs in a nice little table. And so with CTEs, what you do is you, after you've created your CTE, you start typing on the next line your actual query from your database. In this case, we could do something like select everything from the CTE we made, and it'll actually give you the values, just as if you had just created the query on its own. So as you can see, the last earthquake was number 8, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. And flood was number 7, and tsunami and volcano were 5 and 10. But now what we can do is we can use our CTE just as if it was a table in our database, and we can join it into a different statement. And this is the power of CTE. So now we have the last ID for each of the types, and so we still want the rest of the data that's on that row, but we only want the last one, and so a CTE was very useful for that. So we'll say select, and I'll create the joins first. We'll say from event data join Qmax on Qmax dot max ID is equal to EVT dot data ID. And so what this is going to do is that's going to join the CTE into our query that we're joining it to event data. But by joining it, we're going to get only the last event numbers for each type. And we could have joined event type as well, but we didn't need to, because we know by the way the table is there that there's only a unique ID for each of the rows. So we know that by joining just the ID, we're going to get the list that we want. So we could say select evt.star like we did, and we'll run that one, and you can see that it returns the last row for each type. And that's exactly what we want to see here. So as you can see, our tsunami number 5 is tsunami in Big Bay. That's the last one. You can see that's the last tsunami is data ID 5, and we've got the rest of the data on the record, which includes the event description. So there's our CTE and there's our main statement, and that's how you do it on Oracle. So we can continue on and use the same syntax with SQL Server. And what I did was I grabbed some climate change data from the World Bank, and you can see that it has all this data for each country, a whole bunch of different a series of data. This one is cereal yield kilograms per hectare, and there's all kinds of other ones to do with population and stuff. And so I did a select top 1,000 there, and so I'm going to delete that, but you can see the table down below. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select from our climate change data and where the country, so we'll say it, the country code is equal to CAN, which is Canada, just to show what it might look like. And so when I run that one, that's going to give us a list of all of the sort of measures that were done against Canada. And so this is the list with, it's all Canadian, and so we could get that. And if I wanted to get, say, France, I could put in the country code for France that they're using, which is FRA, and that's kind of what we wanted to see. So there's our France and our series code and some measures, and I think I'll comment out this section here, and we're going to be focusing on that column for 1990 there, and we're going to sort of try and find the measures for each one that are in 1990, where the series is the same for both countries, where there are entries for both countries. So what we'll do is we're going to create a CTE just like we did in Oracle. So we'll use with CAN as, and then our brackets, CAN being just the name that we're giving to it, and we'll say select country code, and I'll select the series code, and which is series code, and then I'll select the series name, and then I'll drop down to the next line here, and we'll use our from, so that we can say from climate change data, and that's going to get our data from there. So now we're just grabbing those few fields that we want. So I'll say from climate change data, and I'm going to say where the country code is equal to CAN, so that we get the Canadian measures, which is what we want to see in our first result set. And I'll grab the column, I'll put that on there as well, the 1990 column, which you can see in the bottom, and that's going to give us all those measures for 1990. And then we have our first CTE, which is the data for Canada. So we could do like we did in Oracle, we'll do select star from CAN, and that's going to give us all of our Canadian data. And so if we wanted to put the the two columns side by side for say Canada and France, then we could do that. So we'll go and, just for this example, we'll go and make another CTE, because with CTEs you can add many CTEs into one query. What we'll do is we'll add this one. I'll put a comma up there after, but we'll say with FRA as, and then we'll just copy and paste from up above there, and we'll change the country code to FRA, and that'll give us both Canada and France. So now we have one table with Canada, one table with France, and that's what we want. We'll put a comma in between those. So now we have 2 CTEs, and that's exactly what we want. So I'll start my select statement just as I did before, and I'm going to paste in some fields here, just the ones I want from each one for brevity, but we'll do from CAN, and then we'll join FRA as France, and then we'll paste in some fields. There we go. So we're going to take the can.code, or pardon me, the can.series, the can.series name, 1990 from each one, and I'll join FRA.series on CAN.series, and that's going to join it where the series are the same. We're going to join that, and I think I'll take out CAN.code. I don't think we need that because we're going to be looking at both now, because we've got a alias for CAN 1990 and FRA 1990. And so if I run that one, you can see it's using both of the CTEs, and it's just putting those together so that we can see, both measures or the same measure for both countries, that we can sort of do an eyeball comparison, or we can add some fields with some math in there or something. But this is a nice, easy way to do a CTE on SQL Server. And so that is how you do common table expressions on Oracle and SQL Server. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion on CTEs and SQL Server and Oracle. If you like what you saw today, please give the video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. Click the bell when you see the bell. And if you have any comments or questions, just put them in the comment section below. Have a great day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.